Okay, we've been doing this now for about 2 weeks, and this is officially our 4th episode of the RE/MAX 1 Real Talk, and we're with Kerry Moncla today talking about inspection reports and negotiating repairs. Thank you for sitting with me today, Kerry.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So if you will, tell me a little bit about what you did before you got into real estate.
Oh, Lord. Well, most of you guys know that I'm the weather freak, so I went for, I don't know, probably about 5-10 years. I was in the weather business, worked in Huntsville, Alabama. You were seeing already. Worked at a company in Alabama that built weather radars for the Department of Defense and for weather stations. And then 9/11 hit. Lost the entire, I was over the research and development department, it went under, so I moved back, got a job in Houston doing air pollution modeling, which was so exciting, for a couple years in Houston, and then while I was doing that, I realized I hated my job, and didn't want to do it, and we went to start, I think it was 03 or 02, we went to start buying our first house. So I remember telling my now ex-wife, I was like, you know, I really like real estate. This has always been interesting to me. She goes, maybe you should get your degree or get a license and start working on it. So I started doing that. I would work till 6 or 7 every night and then go to class at Champions because I was in Houston over there, worked in the gallery area.
And you said Chippendales.
No, nobody knows that. That's a side gig. Times were tough.
So you had no experience with real estate before you got in?
No, none at all. I hadn't done anything with it. Hadn't studied in college. Didn't even take a business class hardly. It was all engineering classes and science classes. So it was just out of the blue. I just started, got my license, gave my so sweet boss a 1 week notice, and I was gone. And I jumped right in it.
What's awesome.
Yeah.
So what year did you actually come to RE/MAX 1?
July of 2007 when we moved back here. And I jumped straight on Taryn's team after many, many months of negotiating, you know, because teams, like we said, like she said in her thing, was so new back then. Having licensed team members on the team was kind of new. So I remember we had to go through quite a few steps, I mean, many months of negotiating with RE/MAX, each other, to make it work, and it did.
I had to buy a building for you.
She had to buy a building for me. And we had fun in that building too.
I feel like we have to
We
know
got a
more
lot
about
done in
that
that building.
story.
We got a lot accomplished in it. It was fun.
So how long did you stay on a team before you?
I was on my own at RE/MAX, at Prudential from 03 to 07. When I came here in 07, joined Taryn until the end of 11. I think in 12, January 1st of 12 is when I went out on my own here in Beaumont. So I've been ever since.
Okay, so you have a wide range of experience within real estate now. And for those that don't know you, can you just share all the different kind of niches that you work within?
Obviously, most of y'all know my favorite is commercial. I prefer that over residential every day of the week. Y'all know that. Farm and ranch, big land. I've done a lot of land sales. I do like doing land. Raw land and commercial are my favorite. Done a lot of leases for both commercial, residential, of course. A little bit of everything, but prefer commercial and large land tracts.
You work with a lot of investors, right, as well?
Quite a few, yeah. Here and there, like some come, some go. Some are investors for a year or two, and then they decide they're not.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, quite a few investors.
And have you actually invested in real estate yourself as well?
I did not. Well, the only time I did was when I kept my own house that I sold and started renting it out myself, and that was basically it for a few years. But no, I have not gotten into where I'm buying up a bunch of property or anything like that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how has your experience in all the different forms of real estate influenced how you look at inspection reports and how you guide your...
Well, commercial is very different. There's very little inspections being done in commercial transactions. If a buyer is interested in inspecting something in commercial, he'll usually hire his AC guy or an AC guy to go look at the AC, or a roof guy to look at the roof, or just a few of the major things. They're not as concerned about little things like that can happen in a house that you're going to see in a commercial building. So the experience of inspection reports really is from residential.
Yeah.
And as raw land, you don't really have a lot unless you have, you know, a septic or a well that you want to get inspected on site. But, you know, all of it came from residential.
And this is not something we've talked about before, but you are a guy that, you're one of those people that's a guy who always knows a guy for whatever you're looking for.
Yeah.
So can you stress how important that is to have those relationships? Because I think that's so valuable, not only for the realtors, but your clients as well.
It is. A lot of those contacts came from being involved in the community, like the YMBL especially, and A&M Club and stuff like that. But the list always changes because you have a contractor who's here for a while and then he's in jail or.
Given me good references to some like locksmith or roofer, things like that. So that's why I say you're somebody that sticks out in that. And I do think that that's really important for any new agents that are coming in. Just, you know, to make friends with everybody, even if they're not somebody buying or selling a house at the moment, because it can really benefit you in the long run.
Well, not only would they be a client in the future, but you might need them for something too, and it kind of help each other out. I mean, anybody that was on the team could say that we're always talking about updating our list. Like if this is a new contractor, just throw them on the list.
Yeah.
Because you'll send out people sometimes, and they do a great job for the first few times, and then you get that one or two bad things in a row, and you can't do it because when they ask for recommendations and you send it to them, and they don't do a good job, it reflects on you.
Absolutely. No, I think you're
got to keep
totally
that
right
list
there.
constantly changing.
So last week, whenever Taryn was talking about the contract, we discussed the portion that has as is, you know, with repairs. But on 7D of the contract, do you ever write anything in as far as repairs up front personally?
If I can avoid it, I do not. But if I know there's stuff that we are going to ask, I'll discuss it with the buyer if I'm representing the buyer. And then when I send the actual contract over to the listing agent, I will tell them, we didn't ask for this in 7D because it can raise red flags and causes more problems than sometimes necessary, but we will be asking for it during the inspection period. So go ahead and tell your sellers now.
Yeah.
Because there's sometimes sellers like, why didn't you ask for that in the very beginning?
Yeah.
You know, why are you just now throwing this in there? You knew it was there. Because they don't realize that when you put that in 7D, sometimes it brings up a whole lot more headaches. So I've had title companies see it and go, okay, we need the receipts for all this. Well, John Doe went and did it
The lender
himself.
always sees it.
And the lender
It's a
sees
big
it.
deal.
Yeah, it's a big
Yeah.
deal. It's like you don't, to me, the less the lender sees or has to see, the better. It's not like
I
you're
don't
trying to
want them
hide
get anything
anything.
they don't have to have.
And you're not trying to hide anything. You just, the more they see, the more they get nervous. So you don't
It
want,
just
they
clouds
don't,
the
yeah, they don't need the seller's disclosure notice. They don't need inspection reports unless it's a VA and they need a termite report. We know that.
Yeah.
Other than that, they don't need to see it.
So can you think of a specific instance of something that you have warned them of ahead of time?
Broken window, usually FHA stuff or VA stuff, broken window, something, when I'm explaining to the buyers, I tell them, look, we're gonna check as is, but this does not mean you're buying it as is. This is just I call it the smell, touch, feel, taste part, because what did you already see yourself? What did you smell? What did you see or feel that was wrong in the house? Well, we can address that when we get to inspections. We don't want to put it in there unless we have to.
Yeah.
Every now and then, I think I put a few things in there just because they wanted me to, and they just absolutely demanded it, so I did it. It caused problems. The title company and stuff, I've had title companies ask for receipts for stuff when stuff's in 7D.
Yeah.
Because they're on the hook now too, just like the lenders when they see that. So.
Absolutely. Well, so you started leading into how you talk to them, but can you kind of explain your process with how you work with your buyers when it comes to repairs? Do you have anything specific?
Yeah, when I get the report, either I sit down with them or normally I call them when they pull it up, and I go through every single thing, and all the ones that are not marked deficiency, I'll go through that, and just basically what I try to tell them up front is, look, it's an older house, no house is perfect. The inspection process can be abused, and I'll be honest, I've told most people here, they all know, it is my absolute least favorite part of the residential transaction. I've seen so many deals die over inspections and negotiations that were not necessary. I'm talking about dollars on the, pennies on the dollar repairs, simple things, I could go do.
Like outlet covers.
Yes, outlet covers. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had people, I'm not gonna buy this because that outlet cover's broken. Okay, I'll go to Lowe's and get a 59-cent cover, and I'll put it on there with one screw. If you can buy it at Lowe's and do it yourself, as a person, there's no reason why it can't be done. But I try to tell them, this is not to be abused. We're not asking them to clean the gutters or pressure wash the house or really even cosmetic stuff unless it's something that is going to become a lender required repair up front. And I tell them we're not here to bring a house up to code. Again, unless it's required by the lender like GFCI outlets or something. We're not here to bring a 80-year-old home up to current code. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And that's,
And I
it's
don't see
abuse of the.
GFCIs get called all the time either.
Only
I
in
mean,
VA.
surprisingly, yeah.
Only in VA that and half of FHAs I've say would say half say yes, half say no. So that's kind of a gray area.
Yeah.
But
Say no to what, sorry?
GFCI outlets, at VA I think I've never seen a VA that didn't require it.
Yeah.
FHA depends on your appraiser, which I wish they would all get together and decide across the board for all of us.
Universal language.
Is GFCI yes on FHA or no?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what to tell your sellers. Like, they may not. Well, how do you know? How do you not know? because it depends on what
Depends on
appraiser.
their mood that day.
It depends on their mood and what
Yeah.
appraiser you get and vice versa. Did you buy them wine recently? You know, stuff like that. Whatever.
So for those that haven't written a repair report yet, maybe some agents that are newer, they're seeing this or in this room, after you've gone over it and you've kind of talked about the deficiencies and explained, what you should and shouldn't ask for, do you have them write up what they want out of that? Do you?
I
Touch
su-
pictures?
Well, I suggest going through it, I'll say, okay, small, medium, or large. Like small deal, big, medium-sized deal, bigger deal. I also explain if they're FHA or
like
VA,
that.
what's
That
going to
we
come
brought
up.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I prioritize it so they know, this may look scary if you don't understand it, but it's not. But, you gotta be careful how you say it too, because if you say that and then that one GFCI catches fire, guess what?
Yeah.
But, you have to be careful how you do it. You gotta be, you just have to be careful. But
Yeah.
I do tell them low issue, medium issue, big issue. And then I say, look, you guys probably have your idea of what you'd like fixed, but I'll go ahead and tell you what I think from my experience needs to be done. And then I said, is there anything else you guys think you want to add or want to ask me questions about? And inevitably they'll add a couple of things. And be honest with you, what I'll do is put all the big stuff in there if I'm representing the buyer, and I'll throw a couple small things in there for that's that
negotiate
buy
factor.
yourself a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah.
That's just buying wiggle room for inspections. Okay, but we won't replace that outlet cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that for you then
Yeah.
for 59 cents, but
Okay,
we
yeah.
won't replace all the double pane windows though.
Yeah.
So we do that, and that's why they know kind of, most people have very little knowledge of what's in that report.
Yeah. No,
So
I-
that's a part that I feel like us as agents need more, like I've said many times, need more education on.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be experts in a water heater. We don't need to be experts in a heater, but we all have owned or currently own a home probably at one time. We all should know just the basic understandings of how these things work. If the PVC pipe hanging out of the fascia or your soffit is dripping, you should know that there's an issue there.
Yeah.
You're about to have water on your ceiling. So, but people don't know that. Weep hole stories. So, stuff like that.
That's on here,
Yeah, it
Is that
is.
where the
But
seat-
sticking to the report still though,
Yeah.
and how a lot of times the inspectors will put, they will advise for, have it further inspected by a specialist on each one, even some that are maybe
Yes.
minor
Yeah.
things. How do you handle that and which ones do you?
I typically tell them, I'll go through case by case and say, okay, they're doing this, you gotta understand, inspector's covering his butt too.
Yeah.
I mean, and rightfully so, because they can get sued very easily, I'm sure. And, they're the ones that are roof, especially now with the reader roofs, I know the FHA guidelines, if the FHA appraiser feels it's less than 2 years of economic life, they will ask for it to be inspected by a roofer,
Yeah.
which is coming up more and more now, that used to not. And foundation stuff, structural stuff. But those are the main ones. But little things like, I can't think of an example right now. There's some, it's like,
Yeah.
I was like, maybe yes, but it's like, the water heater doesn't terminate outside
Next to.
to the ground within 6 inches or whatever. Well, it's gotta go through 4 walls and it's gotta go through brick. You're actually gonna cause more trouble.
Yeah.
And the ones that, the vent for the bathroom doesn't go all the way through
Yeah,
because
to
of the
the
newer
attic.
code. That you don't wanna cut a hole in the existing roof, period. Like a roofer will say, just wait until it's re-roofed. Then when they re-roof it, they're supposed to bring it up to code.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Like, you gotta be careful because sometimes they'll say that and it's actually gonna cause more harm if you start to do these things than good. And we don't wanna do that,
Yeah, okay, you had mentioned earlier of up to code. So how can you explain to a client what is up to code means versus clear and present danger?
It's tough. He'll put it in the report if it's, he'll typically say, doesn't meet current industry standards.
A fire hazard.
Yeah, and you just tell them, look, this home was built 40 years before this code came into place. Some of these codes are brand new. Those ARC fault AFCI things, those are all for newer homes. That's only, 5, 6, 7 years that they've come up with those, or at least became an issue, or became a reality. You're not gonna go through a 40-year-old house and rewire the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's like open
just-
ground, a lot of those old
Yes.
houses, they don't have
ground.
that wiring, yeah.
Yeah, so
on
what
there.
people do, like I've done it before in my old house, you all have 2-prong, everything's 3-prong now. I just took it out, put it in 3-prong.
Yeah.
And then plug stuff in. Now, if it's sensitive stuff, you're supposed to put it on a surge protector, of course, but, you're not gonna go in and rewire a whole house and add ground. It's astronomically expensive, so,
Yeah.
I-
Well, there's some things that some people may not see that often out there, but I think it's something to recognize when you do. But how do you advise your client when you see something like a Federal Pacific electric panel? Seen one of those?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
one in my second house for years, and they tripped, and when they tripped, the breakers were very expensive because they're phasing them out. I tell them, these
They're
have had a history of in the past having fire issues. This one's been on this house for 50 years, so hasn't burned yet. Doesn't mean it can't. It's going to cost about $2,000 to replace the electric box. It's not required to replace it. I always recommend just to do it if I'm representing the buyer, but I've had many of them go through and they didn't care either way.
Yeah.
Or you can have an electrician come and look at it and just give you the blessing, yeah, it's okay, or no, we need to do something about it.
Yeah.
So.
Can I add something about Federal Pacific?
Yes, ma'am.
Some insurance companies won't write.
That's becoming common now too. Zinsco, I had that with Zinsco once recently, that's a good point. And Zinsco, or CINSCO or KO, they're similar to Federal Pacific.
So then would you advise, if you know that one is in a house like that, of inquiring with the insurance company and finding out, or is it kind of a mum's?
That happened to one I just sold over here in off of Tangledall. They moved in and the insurance inspector came in, of course, after closing, went through the garage, and there was an old Federal Pacific box in there next to the newer box, and they were not going to insure it until that box was removed.
Oh, wow.
So they did it themselves. They cut the box out. The box wasn't, it actually was live. She could have killed herself. It's one of my best friend's wife. She's stubborn. She's stubborn, very stubborn.
Was that a cash transaction?
Nope.
So they've already got their loan and funded, and then they're coming back.
It's just like the
Well, it's
roofs.
just like the roofs,
It's like the
yeah,
roofs.
and when you said that about the roofs,
Yeah.
that has stuck with me, and so
Yeah.
now, whenever I pull the inspection report, if it's close to that, I recommend, and that's another
Yeah.
one, like we had spoke about before, of
Absolutely.
having them sign off on, if
Yes,
I recommended
they won't.
that they won't,
Yeah, no doubt. But now with the Federal Pacific thing, that is something that we need to kind of be more cognizant of, because it is coming up more and more with insurance, and Joe made a good point, so.
Yeah,
What's because I thought there was a deal that I had in Groves that I thought actually had this Federal Pacific stuff. Turns out it wasn't, but it looked like it. And so I was just curious, what is the age of the home that's typical?
1950s to
That you would typically see it
1980s, I
in?
believe, is what
I
they're saying
had,
around.
my
Yeah.
home on Carnation was 1970, and it had one in there.
When I searched
Vivian
it, it
sold
was
me one with
58.
one in my house.
Yeah.
Thanks, thanks, Vivian. About half the breakers went out in the first 3 years, and they cost like hundreds of dollars each.
Which
Like,
Vivian?
she wasn't in the business
She
yet.
weren't born
This
yet.
was in like 2007. She wasn't in the business in 07. But yeah, I had a full Federal Pacific box. It cost me $1,800 to replace it. Oh my God.
When you're representing a seller in an older home, like when you, like the one you bought.
Oh, the one you bought from her.
Yeah. No, but actually it was a buyer. But when you sold it, do you ever think it's a good idea for them to have an inspection prior to listing?
The seller?
Yeah, if you've got little
You can
gray.
talk them into it. It's
If
great.
if it's if you can talk them into it and they'll do it, yeah. Especially on really like old townhomes and stuff like that, where there's probably, or one that there's a lot of stuff wrong and the seller doesn't seem to think that there is.
Yeah.
If you can get them to talk them into, like, let's get an inspection, see what we're up against ahead of time. It's hard to get them to do it,
Yeah.
to pull the money out to do it, but occasionally, less than 10 times.
How do you handle the buyer, this has only happened to me once, it kind of threw me, who said, well, I want everything fixed.
We were gonna say.
Oh, I've
It's
had
it's obligated to
No, your
repair
response is,
everything
you've
that's
got to
on
be
you.
kidding.
Yeah. Well, no, I tell them, I was like,
I talked him down, but I was like, well,
oh, that happens, especially with first-time home buyers, so people don't understand.
Yeah.
I tell them, I was like,
Yeah.
the deal's gonna probably fall apart. I was like, it's an older home. I was like, these are the things that probably need to be done. I said, if you're asking for all these things, just go buy a brand new home.
Yeah,
And
you're
there'll
prepared to
still
walk
be
away.
7 to 10 things minimum on
If you
a
get an
new
inspection,
construction.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just think to contribute to what Kristen's saying, whenever I've had a lot of deals where there were multiple offers on the seller's side, and I'm sure you would agree that sellers are less willing to do repairs
Yeah.
when they know they've
They know
got
there's
other
buyers
offers.
who
So
Absolutely.
if a buyer is in a multiple offer situation and they win the deal,
Prep
they they ask for very minimal.
Yeah, prep 'em.
Because they know
Yeah.
that the seller's gonna say no.
Yeah, prep 'em for
And
that.
move to the other deal.
But your job is to let them know up front.
That's what I was asking.
Let them
Yeah,
know
that's what
up
you
front,
changed the
so when it
conversation.
does happen,
Manage the
manage the expectations. That is the key
Yeah,
to
because
all
if
of
you
this.
shoot for the stars,
Yes.
you're probably gonna land, yeah.
Yeah, just, you can ask, but you can expect to hear no.
She's saying.
Yeah. Okay, so back to it, we wanna hear the weep hole story.
So I went out on a listing, oh gosh, 12 or 13, a home over there like in the Colwood area. and I was the 5th agent to go out on the listing. And the 4 agents, we were walking outside of the house, the brick home, and we were looking at stuff, and the soil was kind of high, and I was just going through making notes for her, talking to her. And I said, your soil's high here, you got like an ant bed that looks like it's going into the weep hole. And she goes, the what? I was like, the weep hole. And she goes, you're the first agent that knew what that even was. I was like, what? She goes, the last 4 agents, I asked them, what are those holes? And they said they did not know, and 3 of them told me to caulk them up. And I was like, those are holes that are supposed to be there. You notice it's perfectly every so many inches apart to get the moisture out of your house. You're just holding the moisture in your walls when you do that.
Yeah, but
And, you know,
another
I
point in
couldn't-
competency and how
that's,
important it is.
and these are older agents, these are not,
Yeah.
that's not good, because it made me start thinking, a lot of these agents do not understand what they're seeing on these reports. Most of them are like, I don't know what this means. How can we represent our buyer the best we can if we don't know what's on that report?
Tell me
You
some of
know?
those again,
Doesn't make
talking
sense.
about that you think a lot of people don't know what they are, that are kind of simple things we should know about. You had pointed out, I mean, like the other day we had it on one of our pages about the attic fan or.
Oh, yeah, the attic
Things
fans,
like
yeah,
that.
little things like that, but most of those don't have motors to them anymore anyway. They're
Yeah,
running-
they just take the
Or
motor
switches,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, just understanding what
They're
it is though,
expensive,
when
just to
somebody
know,
asks questions.
yeah, just to know what it is, you know, is kind of important. You know, like I said, the basic understandings of the simple, like the basic operations of each of the mechanical
Yeah.
items in the house. Every agent should know just the basics of it.
Absolutely. Another basic thing that is good for us to all know, because we've seen it, unless, you know, you haven't done one before and then you're gonna see it. Can you explain what a conducive condition is?
A conducive condition,
Yeah.
like termites?
Yeah, like the stuff that you're seeing on those reports, like WDI reports.
Oh,
or-
yeah, it's the same old stuff that we always see, like high soil, you know, you need to see so much of your slab.
4 inches.
Moisture.
Yeah, 3 to 6 inches or something like that. Moisture damage, wood rot, particularly on the exterior. Foliage touching the house, because that's a way for them to crawl onto the house from, you know, from a source. I mean, I've dug trenches in August, an hour before closing back in the day when VA would require that. You know, FHA used to require all
I
that
had the
stuff
morning
too.
of a closing before too,
At
yeah.
one time, FHA, from what I remember, required all that stuff too. They were conducive conditions.
Oh, really? Like.
Than not just
VA does
VA.
now, yeah.
The only inspection report required in a residential transaction period is that I know of is a termite report,
Yeah.
WDI report for VA.
I've had to have a
It's required.
septic one recently, that they asked for the water well test,
Yeah.
the septic test,
VA?
and the
Was
WDI.
it-
Yeah,
was it
it was
VA?
VA, yeah, it was all VA, but still, I usually
You
only use
mentioned
WDI.
like new agents not knowing that stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm just thinking back to when I was a new agent, and maybe I didn't
The
know
first
those
time I
things.
saw
But
it.
I also think like one of the things that you can do as a new agent is talk to an inspector
Yeah.
and build a friendship
Yes.
and a relationship with an inspector, because
Again,
all of them
yeah.
want your business.
Yeah.
And so if you call them and ask them questions about their
They'll
report,
help.
they're gonna help you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
And-
I'm just saying that because a lot of people.
When the contractors go out to do work, either on my own house back in the day or on homes that I'm doing transactions on, I would go out there and watch what they do.
Yeah.
I would watch every single thing they do and learn it, and then Google's your friend.
That is-
Like the most recent thing where the dielectric, the 2 different metals, that was new to me. I'm like, "Yes." So I went and Googled it and just started reading up on it so I could at least explain it when it came up, knowing is this really a big deal or not? And come to find out, when I sent the plumber out on the first one, he goes, you really don't want to do that in this one case because of this, X, Y, Z. Okay, so write that down, you learn it, put it in your bank of memory and move on. But you know, you at least see something new in the report, just Google it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Like
video
you
can
said,
come
ask
up.
them.
It's that simple, yeah.
You bring up a point, that is sometimes inspectors, you know, see something and they make an educated guess about what the issue is.
Yeah.
And they put it in the report, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're not right. It's
That's
not
true.
their fault.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but you get, but so, you know,
Oh,
you get
yeah.
an electrician or a plumber out there and they're like, no, that's not really what's going
It's
on
not
here.
that necessary,
And
yeah.
usually it's good news.
It usually is, and that usually helps the buyer and the seller when they hear it from the actual expert,
Yeah.
the electrical
And you look
person or
good
plumber.
for suggesting,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that they get a second opinion or,
Even if
you know,
it costs a
licensed
few
professional out
$100.
there in the
Yeah.
field.
You know, it's worth the
Yeah,
money.
exactly.
to
But
get
I
them
think
out.
that is another point that's so important, to stay curious about it, you know what I
Yes,
mean?
that's the
Ask the
key.
questions, do that, like you said, Google it,
Yeah.
keep looking for it, don't just, if you don't know it, don't just accept that as that, oh, I
Yeah,
don't know
I
it, you know
think-
what I mean? Seek out.
I
the-
think the stuff, some of the things in the report are intimidating to certain agents, some agents that just don't want to even mess with it. Like, I don't care about I don't care about dielectric, whatever. Of course, most people don't,
Yeah.
but if you're gonna represent a buyer, you need to kind of understand
Yeah.
what you're explaining to them on the report.
Well, like I had a house with solar panels, and that's something that's not common here.
Not
So
here.
the inspectors aren't even familiar with it,
Yeah.
really. I mean, and had to find a solar sales company that could tell us, because we had disclosed it as not sure if they work. Their electricity bill's pretty good, but they had no idea the whole time they lived there.
Yeah.
And what they told us is to go out on a sunny day and look at the where it clocks the amps, because it
Oh,
starts
is it
spinning
spinning?
backwards.
Spins backwards, yeah.
I mean, and that's something I never even thought about to tell them, you know what I mean, to kind of check
Little
on it.
things.
So,
Little-
are you someone who ever sends over the whole inspection report? Do you think that it's warranted sometimes?
I always ask the listing agent, just out of courtesy, because I mainly work with sellers, and it drives me nuts when they ask for one or two things and they send the entire report. It's not like we're trying to hide something, but it's like, okay, now we're gonna have to go through this whole rigmarole of updating the sales disclosure, show this report, just send the pages that correspond to what you're asking. We don't need to know the rest of it. If we're gonna fix these few things, send the part that describes it. Yeah.
So what about if your buyer says, no, I want to? How does that conversation go?
No, I don't want to what?
No, I want to send the whole report. I want them to see that I'm not asking for that much. I've had that several times, just curious.
If it becomes a negotiating thing back and forth, like, look, we're not asking for much, the report's way worse, and they say, all right, let me see it, I'll send it to them, of course.
Yeah, but
I
just tell them
don't,
that up
I
front.
typically just will not send it unless they, I want their approval.
So do you just
out
tell
of
your buyers
curiosity.
that, is that it may upset the other side, or?
You need their permission to.
Yeah, I don't think the buyer really cares if you send the whole report, unless we're having trouble negotiating the repairs.
Yeah.
And they're like, well,
I've
just
had some
show
of you
them
that they
that
wanna
there's a
send
lot more stuff that needs to be, could be done that we're not asking for. Most
I
of it's
like that
ticky-tacky.
you say that,
Yeah.
because that's the expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it is, set it up front. And
Yeah.
So there's
Alright.
no shock. The
Absolutely.
shock and awe in this business can be bad.
Yeah.
It's usually not good when there's a surprise to a buyer.
No,
so
but yeah, I
they're
mean,
never
we
good
talk about that in our
surprises.
classes a lot about when, or whatever arguments arise out of difference of expectations, and so really managing those at the beginning.
And that's
just
Charlie's
being
biggest
transparent.
thing.
Yeah,
He's
that's.
good. He harps on that. It's
Yeah,
true. He's
absolutely.
absolutely true.
Okay, so can you explain the difference between repairs from an inspection and lender-required repairs for those that don't know?
Yeah, I mean, I typically, and I'll do that with when I sit down with the buyer too, and the seller. If I get a report and I'm representing a seller, and it's an FHA loan, and the agent's probably new on the other side with the buyer, they'll ask for a few little silly things, but then there's glaring lender-required items for sure that are gonna come up. So I try to go back to that agent and go, look, I'm not trying, and I have to tell the seller, I'm like, look, these are gonna come up again. You really try to avoid the seller getting double dipped.
Yeah.
They hate when when you hit them with the inspection report, they fix it, then the appraiser comes and hits it, like, wait a minute, I already did this.
Yeah,
Why
you
am I doing
agree.
this? So it falls on us, I think, to know, at least have a general idea of what is a VA or an FHA or USDA required repair. So when it comes up as you're representing the buyer, you say, okay, these are going to come up. We're not gonna be able to get the loan unless these are done, so we
Yeah.
must ask for these, regardless of how silly they are. Not some of them are. But, and as a selling agent, I tell them, look, they asked for this, but this agent didn't realize that these are gonna have to be done because it's FHA. So we'll go back and tell them no on these, but we'll do this for them because we have to anyway.
Yeah. And you
so.
mentioned one of those earlier, but again, just for those that may not know, you had said a broken window earlier, but what are some typical lender-required repairs to look for?
I got them right.
Yeah.
There's a whole list of them. Here's the actual guidelines from FHA that
Yeah.
I've printed out and
Let
read
us know.
millions
Lay
of
it on
times.
us.
No, I mean, people don't realize that you have to have ingress and egress out of each bedroom, right? A window, a lot of times in Old Town, they're painted shut, those old wooden windows. One window has to open. One window has to open for them to be able to get out. You've got any exterior, we all know the exterior wood rot, any exterior chipping paint, no matter how old the house is. Handrails typically, yeah, it could be a barbecue covered thing. It doesn't even have to be on the house, it could be on an outbuilding. I've had it on an outbuilding. If there's chipping paint or rotten wood on an outbuilding, or a barbecue cover thing that you had, they had like a little house thing, like just roof over a thing of barbecue pit, built-in barbecue. And there was wood rot chipping paint on it, they made them, they called that. They called it.
Okay.
That was
So,
FHA?
that was FHA. GFCI outlets, 50/50, and 100% on VA in my experience.
Even if it hasn't been updated,
Yeah, I
say
mean,
kitchens and bathrooms.
I've not always
Kitchens,
had a call on
bathrooms,
And
that.
outside,
exterior, kitchen, baths, garage,
Smoke
utility room.
detectors and carbon monoxide detectors.
That's come up
Yeah.
now too,
Oh,
yes,
I haven't
that
gotten
used to not be a big
Yeah.
deal, yeah.
FMVA.
No, if you got gas and there's no CO detector in there and you're doing FHA or VA, you might just go ahead and tell the seller to put a CO, cheap little
Really?
CO detector in their
Which is
hallway.
also just really important
Huh?
when you're concerned about your client anyway. And they have
In the
them
whole
now where you
house.
can just plug
CO.
them into the
Yeah.
outlets, you know, and they're good.
For CO, you only need one in the
whole
house.
house,
If you have gas, what specifically?
Gas
Just
to the house.
original to the
Any-
Yeah,
house?
it just, it could,
heater,
if you have a
water
gas
heater.
leak, you could end up with carbon
Right.
monoxide.
Anything with gas to
poisoning.
the house, yeah,
Yeah.
you need to have at least one CO detector,
Make
Anywhere
sure
in
the
the house.
batteries work or whatever,
Yeah.
because
yeah.
as a listing
We have to do
agent,
that too.
the appraiser on one of mine, I'm not the listing agent, just happened to me a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago. I wasn't the listing agent, but the battery, they didn't work.
Yeah.
So now we have to call her back out.
For simple 9
Oh,
volt
to
batteries.
verify
So when you're doing your light bulbs,
Because they're
do
not
your
gonna
batteries
check it.
in
They're
your
not
smoke
gonna
alarms
check
and
it.
see
Yeah,
it.
It's like a-
You want to try to catch as much of it in the inspection part, because if he has to go back out, it's gonna cost the buyer money, they're gonna be upset, and it may cause delays, because appraisers get backed up, and you have to go back out to re-inspect, especially if it's a VA one where they're limited on time, because there aren't that many VA appraisers, it's gonna delay, you'll probably have a delay, and you can avoid all that typically by, knowing up front what is going to be when you get the report, and ask for it up front.
Yeah.
And get it out of the way, and you ask the seller's agent, can you try to get these items here done before the appraiser goes
Yeah.
out, so they don't have to, they're not obligated, we know
Yeah, but if you're
that. But you
keeping
beg,
it,
can you please do these before the appraiser goes out, so we don't have to, my buyer's tight on money, they don't wanna spend $200
Yeah, and
to
just
send it
delay.
back out, we used to be able to take pictures and send it to them, those
Yeah.
days are over apparently. So, see, there's a gray area, there's
What
that,
I've recently learned is that on VA, the buyer doesn't have to pay for a final inspection, the lender.
the lender.
No,
No, they're
that
not
is good
supposed to pay,
know.
they used to not pay for the termite inspection
They don't
either.
have to pay for termite.
Remember when you had to ask for like several $1,000s in non-wowables?
$1,100.
Yeah,
Now
$1,100.
now they pay for the
Yeah.
non-turbite though,
Oh,
right?
they
I
do.
mean,
And the
I've
hot
seen-
water
I-
meter.
Yeah.
I didn't
water
Yeah,
meter.
because mine just paid for it too,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Gas.
Have you done much work in rural areas where you have to deal with septic systems and wells and things like that?
Yeah. That's one thing I always recommend. Like, I don't know a lot about wells or septics to the point where I really haven't read into those much. I should, I haven't yet. I do recommend wells and septic certainly get looked at and find out when the septics were last pumped.
Yeah.
Because some people, I've been there 50 years and we never pumped it. Well, then it's
Oh.
probably gonna need to be pumped. And we got 18 little children running around out here in the country.
Yeah.
Putting a lot of pressure on the septic tank, so.
And then the distance that you have to have between the septic and the well for a
Yes.
VA loan especially, so.
Well, yeah.
So how do you make them take accountability for the repairs that they are requesting? So that it's not a situation where when something breaks in their house, they're coming back and pointing the finger at you, like, you didn't tell me that I should ask for that, you know what I mean? Because we always want them to be in agreement on everything.
It's
Yeah.
called CYA.
Yeah, and if they want to add other things to the report, just to ask that aren't really that big of a deal, and they're adamant about it, you do it, you put it in there. And if there's things they don't want to ask for, or they don't even want to get an inspection, I just make sure I note it. Say, okay, I told them this, on the inspection form or whatever it is, that they didn't want an inspection. It's very rare that I've had people that don't want it.
Yeah, I make
Do you have them
if they
sign it?
don't
Yeah.
want
Yeah, make them sign it, sure. And if I do, but I rarely have that,
Yeah, I'm either, because I tell them they really should, and they say they want to, so.
And I've had some where a buyer had just backed out and there was a very current
to look at.
report.
Mhm.
And it's probably from Wes or somebody that would have recommended it anyway. And I was like, we can use this. Something can happen instantaneously. If something in a house breaks, it's instantaneous. So it doesn't matter how, when, or where, it's gonna be instantaneous. So anything can happen in that week or two, just like between inspection and the walkthrough.
Yeah.
Something can happen.
Yeah.
I said, so just be prepared for that. Now, and also tell them if you have a warranty, the warranty will cover certain items, and we kind of need to know what's covered and what's not, stuff like that. So that was fun.
Tell me, who has been your greatest influence in business?
Well, there's been multiple.
One or multiple?
There's multiple. I mean, Taryn was instrumental in my business. My very first contract I wrote in '03, I was in Houston. I sent it to Taryn to review. I remember that and said, hey, how did I do? And I think I passed. I don't remember. She said you did a good job, and so I've always respected her. My mom and her were best friends. So when I remember just Taryn coming over, flying and going on her, working all the time, like all dressed to the gill, like coming to our house, running in and out, and I'm a kid running around. Gotta get back. I gotta show this helm. Blah blah blah. So I just like that looked kind of cool. I enjoyed that. And
That's really
so
cool. I didn't know
Taryn
that.
for sure. Charlie and I we were friends doing commercial stuff back when he owned, when he was doing Foxworth on 11th Street. And, Charlie, I used to go to him for commercial stuff sometimes. If there was things I needed help on a commercial, and sometimes I still do, he and I will sit down and spitfire, sometimes Ryan. So Charlie, my first broker, Stacy, I learned a lot from. I was a nerdy type where I'd go and read a page or two of the contract as detailed as I could, and then write every question that I didn't understand or whatever, and sit down with him and go, "Can you explain this to me?"
Yeah.
And
It's mastery.
It helps, but until you actually go out and apply it out in the real world, you really start to learn where the issues can come up in each paragraph. So
Absolutely.
my brokers and Taryn mainly.
I love that, and I love that you said how you learned it, because that's something that we try to talk about and teach here when we talk about mastery, is that it's not a one and done thing. You come, you learn it, like you said, you go out, you study it, you take it into your business, apply it, learn the lessons from it, come back and go through the cycle again. But I think that that's great, and it's a part of what got
You gotta
here.
learn sometimes by failing too.
Absolutely.
You mess up something, oh God, you get scared that something bad's gonna happen, so I'd go back and learn that one paragraph or that one item, and I'd just read it, try to think of every scenario that could come up that could cause a problem. And try to keep it from happening.
Yeah.
Stay out of the courts, that's all I wanna do. Stay out of intermediation.
Yeah.
So far, 20 years, knock on wood, I'm 100%. But
Okay, so what do you feel like is your biggest strength in your business, Kerry Moncla?
I guess kind of what I was just saying, just that I kind of have this, I hate not knowing something. I hate when I'm with a client or another agent or anything, and I'm like, I don't have the answer, or I don't quite understand something all the way. Luckily, that's become less and less and less over time the more you do. So what I would do is it would drive me crazy. So I'd go back and just Google, read it, learn it, meet with inspectors, talk, like I said, I'd call the inspectors, watch contractors, stuff like that. Just always wanting to learn and don't want to not know the answer. I want to be able to, there are people I still go to and ask things of. Nobody knows everything in this business. I'm the same way. So I always go to people and ask little questions. What's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on this? And just kind of talk it in a group. That's why I like the mastermind stuff, that we can do stuff like that.
Me too.
That would be one of my biggest strengths, I guess.
That can be one of the best things, is if you have a client, the way that I started my first year of real estate, some of my very first clients were a dual engineer, husband and wife.
Oh, you'll learn from them.
Okay, the questions that they threw at me.
Yep.
And I would
Mind-boggling.
not say, I don't know, but let me find out.
Yep.
And, this just went on and on and on. It was wonderful.
Wonderful.
Because
Yep.
I found
Made you dig
out
deep.
all of the
Yep.
answers they wanted.
Yep.
They sent me all of their friends.
Yep.
All of their
People
friends.
respect you if you say,
That
I
is
don't know.
really, I think,
I'll get
what
back
And
to
go
you.
through and actually look
Yes.
for it and seek the
Yeah,
answer.
and y'all learned that, that's one thing we always talk about, like you just say, I don't know, I will get you the answer, and you would follow up and give them the answer. They respect that. You're not gonna know every answer, especially if the engineers are asking the questions. They're gonna be things you don't even understand, like why are you even thinking about
So
this?
don't fake it till you make it.
Yeah, don't fake,
Face it
do
till you
not
know.
fake it till you make it. Do not sit there and throw stuff out there thinking you know it just to kind of smooth things over. People know that you're not. They know that you're not, that you don't know what you're talking about. They know if you're lying to them. They're like, okay, whatever. Just be upfront and say, look, I don't know the answer to that. You caught me, good job. You caught me off guard on one, I can't answer. They think that's funny when I say it like that, and I'll say, let me get you the answer and I'll be back.
Yeah.
Within 24 hours, you can get an answer. Just make sure you do it though. Make sure to follow up, or they will not respect you anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so in the nature of that, on the flip side, what is one area of your business that you would like to grow in still?
Well,
Since we are
patience for
always
sure. For anyone that knows me, patience for sure. I tend to lose I lose my patience sometimes, because I guess so many times over the years, you have agents that truly have no idea what they're doing. And I mean, no idea. And some have been doing it a while. And they send something to you, and they're like, what? So you almost have to do their work for them. And I got to where it was hard for me to deal with that. And I was like, okay, look, you need to go learn this stuff better, please. I don't have time. I really don't have time to do your whole side of the transaction and mine. So my systems have been in place for a while, but I kind of stepped back from those in 18 for a while. I'm sometimes bad about organization, because I'm always going in a million different directions with different things. I mean, we all in this business have issues with that sometimes, but I would say getting my systems and organization back in place, and patience, for sure, patience. with people, with the transaction, you know. You get to a point where you're kind of burned out and you're like, okay, I don't want to deal with this today. I'm not helping, just go learn it and then we'll talk later.
Yeah. Okay, so how long have you been in the business again?
January 1st will be my 20th year.
Okay,
So, 20
and
years.
I've asked this question to everyone, and I'm going to ask it to you. What would 20 years in Kerry Moncla tell rookie Kerry if you had a way to give him one piece of advice?
Don't take anything personally. Don't be afraid of rejection. Don't try not to bring work home with you so much, like to where you're worried that maybe you didn't get this listing, or why did my friend use their other friend? That's going to happen. All that stuff's going to happen in this business. It's happened to every one of us. You know, we've been on both sides of it. Just be patient and just keep your head down and go, go, go. The results will happen. You, no matter what, if an agent's sitting around that's been in a long time going, I can't do this, I'm not getting business, and then you ask them, well, what are you doing? And then you hear basically nothing. I mean, you're
So
young.
focus on the systems and the processes versus reaching that goal.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first years, we would give out awards every month at Prudential for the top agent that month that had commission, top sales, whatever. I got the top commission multiple times just doing leases because I had no other business. So I would just take everyone's phone time. I worked, 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. I did not take a vacation, and don't do this. I did not take a vacation from 05 to 15. Literally didn't take a vacation. So that's why I got burned out.
All the eyes got big.
But that's why I got burned out. 05 was right before kids. Kids came in 06. He talked about this one time, made a good point. He goes, you will burn out so easily working like that. Maybe 2 to 3 times a year, take a week off. And when you take off, don't do what most of us do and what I used to do and have your phone on you and working, because that's not a vacation. You're not doing yourself any good. Fill yourself back up so you can be the best you can be when you get back to it. If you're empty, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it happens in work. I got to where I was so burned out, I could care less in 18, and I could care less. I mean, I'll be honest, I could care less. I was so burned out, I was empty. I needed to stop, take some time for myself, focus on my personal life, focus on this. And it's a hard thing to do in this business, to balance work, because work goes home with you, because it never stops in residential. Commercial, it stops at 5. It's 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
That's why you like it.
One of the reasons I do like it, I'm not gonna lie, that is one of the aspects. But just, don't do that.
Yeah.
Take time for yourself, it's important. Don't take time from your kids and working all the time. I mean, I didn't really do that, but prioritize anything.
Okay, so Taryn last week, I know Charlie's talked a lot of times about how whenever he came in that day to talk to the ladies about RE/MAX and buying in, and how he got Taryn to come with him. When I asked her last week how that happened, she said that you played a part in that as well. So can we hear that from your perspective?
I brought a commercial lease over to Charlie at the 11th Street office. I don't know if I was doing it with him or Lee Wheeler at the time. And I walked in the office, and Charlie and I knew each other well. We were joking all the time and being, silly, nasty, whatever we could do, joking with each other. And I remember walking in, and he was sitting at his desk like this, he saw a ghost. And I'm like, what's wrong with you today, man? What gives? Like, you're not your usual jovial self. And he goes, Sally Bundy just walked out of the office 3 minutes before you got here. I'm like, so what and what? And he goes, she asked me if I would like to buy RE/MAX. I was like, RE/MAX? And at the time, we were at Coldwell Banker. And I'm like, oh, and he goes, I just don't know. And I was like, and I said immediately, I was like, I could tell he was hesitant. And I was like, what if I could tell you that I could get Taryn's our team back over there if she found out you were buying? He goes, then I would do it. He goes, then I'll do it. And I called Taryn on the spot, and it took her 3 seconds. Yep, we'll do it. Because we were already kind of.
That gives me chills for some reason.
Nothing against where we worked at the time, but it wasn't the same. It was not family.
It was home.
It was very,
This is home.
I'm not gonna lie, it was not a great year.
Yeah.
This was home. And I said, okay, hold on. I called Taryn on my BlackBerry back then. It's like, hey, Taryn. She grabbed her BlackBerry and was like, absolutely. I was like, I knew the answer already. I was like, and I said, okay, we're on board. And that was literally, it was just happened to be when I just happened to walk into his office at the time.
Yeah. Well, Kerry, thank you so much for
Thank
sitting
you
with
for
me
having me.
today and for
Thank you.
answering all the questions.
Thank you all.